Here's an interesting blog post from Inverse about The Last of Us 2 in relation to Halo's 2 plot twist. Now, I don't know how this person can compare these two games and these two storylines. One is a space adventure shooter game having to do with annihilation, and the other one is a post apocalyptic world of people surviving in a zombie horror story. So the idea, I guess, is that the playing as the Arbiter in Halo 2 is a plot twist in relation to playing as a anti-hero or an antagonist as protagonist in The Last of Us 2, I guess. It's hard to say. I wouldn't compare these two very well because we know that the Arbiter in Halo 2 does an about face. He does a turncoat. He goes, wait a second, I don't want to serve this empire that's going to kill everyone. I want something else. So he finds his virtue, or he finds a better way to live or what have you, and decides to join the humans. Whereas Abby in The Last of Us 2 is pretty much straight up kills Joel. That we're there to hate her, and that's the job. She brutally murders Joel, and then we get to play as her. It's a very odd feeling. It's very different than the feeling you get playing as the Arbiter in Halo 2. So I'm not sure why this person's even thinking along these lines unless there's some sort of emotional connection. But as I read the article, I didn't really see that at all from his argument. So I'm not sure what's going on here. One argument is that Halo 2 was divisive. You know, there were people who saw it as a poorly done game. Yes, it was rushed. You could definitely tell it from the ending. But the story itself, I think, was handled rather well. Here's was this GameSpot from back in the day, really, and even they said disappointing story, short campaign. That the campaign was cut in half to make room for the other story, which was the Arbiter story. There was all sorts of great things with co-op play, all sorts of ideas with matchmaking they brought into. So lots of reasons to love the game for the gameplay methods, but some people did not like the story or like the inclusion of the Arbiter because you played as a villain, which seems like a way to flesh out the world and to include new gameplay options. So it proved divisive as a disparity between critical reviews and audience reviews of Last of Us Part 2 is any indication that game's use of similar villainous twist is proving controversial among fans who might be resistant to this kind of ethical challenge. Okay, this is not an ethical challenge in Halo 2, all right? We're not like, oh my god, the Arbiter is a horrible creature. It's like, no, the Arbiter makes the choice. And then you control as them. You go, wait a second, this is wrong. I want to help the humans. Now, you could correct me if I'm wrong on that. Obviously I'm missing a lot of detail, but there's a big difference between killing a protagonist and then playing as the antagonist, who is then trying to fight and defeat the other protagonist, and playing as the Arbiter helping the humans. Big, big, big difference. I don't know why this person is trying to equate the two. So playing as Abby apparently makes us further acknowledge our own or her own humanity, which is kind of a backwards way of doing it. You probably should have done that in the first place and shown a different perspective of the events of the first game. That's what you should have started off as. Other people would even argue it would have been better to kill off a secondary character like Dina or Jesse, and in fact Jesse eventually gets killed as well, to have the focus be on this side character and keep Joel alive for whatever reason, to support or to help teach Ellie about this cycle of revenge. If this is what's going to take, it's going to go back and forth. But we're left with nothing. We're left with Ellie just going her own way and killing scores of men and women and dogs just to get to Abby and not even achieving her goal. It's like having a railroad and you're so focused. It's rage-filled revenge. And you get to the end of that railroad and all of a sudden you just stop the train because you had a flashback of the person who died, which logically, if you're trying to commit revenge or murder of someone who died who is important to you, and there's no law of the land, obviously you're in a post-apocalyptic world, and you have a flashback or a vision of that person in front of your face when you're strangling someone, that would motivate you more to achieve your goal. It wouldn't detract from it. So something in that scene did not make sense, especially when we saw other flashbacks and other scenes with Ellie throughout the story, and she's just continuously going for her quest. So I don't know why that would suddenly cause her to react in the opposite way. It doesn't make too much sense. So this is what the author here is trying to say is that, well, what if we're challenging why we do the things we do in games? Like, why do we kill? Why do we do all these things? That's great. I love that fact. I love that fact in Planescape Torment, where you were constantly exploring the world and discovering things about yourself. Why am I doing all this? It's because there's something of me, of my past, in the entire level of Sigil or of other levels as well. And there might be something I'm missing. A memory might pop up here and there, an item, a piece of my body, that sort of thing. It was worth the exploration and time to read everything and go through everything. So it's good to have this question, especially in games like KOTOR and KOTOR 2. What makes Revan so special? What is pain? Why is everyone attracted to me because I'm in so much pain? Why does the Force work that way? These are interesting questions to have as you journey along in your quest. So the latter doubles down on this by naming every enemy, even the dogs, reinforcing this more ethical approach to violence in games. Okay, this is where I have to stop and say, what the hell are you talking about? Just because you name every enemy and you have dogs that are also named is such a surface level thing. It doesn't make any bit of difference. They're just opponents for you to get by. They're very detailed opponents. They have lots of articulation. They're animated. They got voice acting. Yeah, it's great. But they're still a target on your path to get to your ultimate target, which is just another body. So it does not reinforce an ethical approach to violence. Ellie is a killing machine. She is slaughtering all kinds of people to get to her goal. And for whatever reason, the thing that motivates her to do that, she sees a flashback of and doesn't commit to it. You know, think of it like a thief, a master thief breaking into a vault or something. And he doesn't do it to steal the jewel or to steal the money. He does it for the fun of it, for the challenge, to sneak around everyone, to pick every lock, to get around all the security. And instead of stealing that jewel, he goes, you know what, I'm just going to leave my calling card. I was here. I did it for fun. I do it for the thrill. Kind of like a Sherlock Holmes character. It's all a puzzle. It's all a game. It's all for fun. It's all to stimulate his brain, because to him, it's not about the ethical issues. But I don't think there's any ethical issues being popped up that, from what I've seen of The Last of Us 2. All we get is that 1-2-second flashback of Joel on the porch, and then Ellie just gives up. You're just like, what was that about? Why did you do this? You were beating the head of a woman. You were stabbing all kinds of other guys that were part of the murder of Joel. You had similar reactions, but it didn't stop you on your quest. It's very strange to have an internal conflict without actually showing the internal conflict of a character on their plot. So here now he talks about the first game, how the Fireflies would do anything, even bomb quarantine zones to destabilize the military occupation of America to restore freedom. They're also willing to sacrifice Ellie. Right. So if you have an opponent and they're going to kill your daughter or your surrogate daughter, and they're extremists, guess what you have to do? You have to be extremist as well. So Joel, in a sense, was justified for doing what he could to save Ellie. And we were brought on a journey in the first game to care about Ellie when we meet her and as we go through the story, to protect her, as she was also protecting Joel in various fights and what have you. So that was the story they were telling, for us to believe that Joel's decision at the end was right, that his moral quandary was all about saving his daughter, the new daughter he just found. And then in the second game, to have that taken away, to have that father figure or even the player character removed, because all of a sudden someone came about and knew about what happened in the previous game, which was a bit of a shock because no one really knew what was going on with this character aside from what we learned before that. They didn't know how to get to Joel. They knew they wanted him, and they just stumbled upon him. And this is after we find Joel helping this person. And Joel is somehow now, I guess his defenses were down. It's kind of like a character assassination of Joel in a sense, because he's not as sharp as he used to be. And we didn't really get a sense of that in the story of Last of Us 2 when you played as Joel in the first 3 hours. So like, yeah, he's just as good as he always was. In fact, he's probably a little better. So why would he drop his guard just because they were part of a fight together with a stranger? Not sure. Ellie coming for Abby and her friends is yet another consequence in the cycle of violence. Yeah, that's logical. That's how it goes. The difference is the Firefly started it. And when it comes to revenge, it's up to the Avenger to end it. We can't hate Abby for what she did to Joel. Sorry, we can hate Abby for what she did to Joel, but from a logical standpoint, we can't blame her unless we blame Joel and Ellie in equal measure. Well, that's where you're wrong. You see, the story didn't showcase that. The story showcased the Fireflies as extremists. And it took an equal amount of force for Joel to save Ellie and get out of there. So it doesn't quite make sense in that capacity, because if you're talking about an isolated incident, they're going to go to extreme. Guess what? The hero is going to go to an extreme and save the day, and that's what happened. The difference was the Fireflies are a huge organization, and now they want revenge. So it's not expanded upon the clearest way, but that's the general idea. So there's always someone else who's part of some other family or some other group who's going to come after you. It's a cycle that will only stop when the victims accept rather than retaliate. Okay, but was that believable? Was Ellie's acceptance of not killing Abby believable? Was it worth it? Because when you're fighting this woman, and you could easily have killed Abby when she was tied up to the tree. It would have been clean and simple, but Ellie didn't think that way. There's something wrong with Ellie. Even after getting the tips of her fingers bitten off, which is incredible that can even be a thing, she still was not infuriated enough to want to kill Abby. It's hard to say. These are very bizarre scenarios with very little understanding of the inner workings of Ellie's mind, aside from a flashback of Joel, which should have motivated her more to do the deed. Abby's prominent placement as a playable character for half the game means that The Last of Us Part 2 is unlike your typical revenge story. Sure. It's one that will keep you thinking even long after the credits roll, and by executing on the same bold storytelling choice that was taken in Halo 2, it moves the conversation toward how we think about violence in games. I'm sorry, but there's really no comparison between the Arbiter in Halo 2 and playing as Abby in The Last of Us 2. There's really no comparison. They're completely different scenarios. It's almost farcical to put it that together. Now, maybe if the Arbiter killed one of the members of the human team that we knew and loved, or even killed Master Chief, that would be very similar. And then you get to play as him, and you're like, wait a second, what I did was wrong. That's the problem, though. The Arbiter realizes what he did was wrong and tries to correct his mistakes because he doesn't want to be part of a theocratic group that wants to eliminate all life in the galaxy. Whereas Abby is just Abby. She wanted to get her revenge and she got it. She didn't learn anything. So it really helps to have people gain virtue or lose vices, or become a turncoat for virtue or the philosophy of the protagonist. Big difference there. So I don't know how this person's equating the two, but he's obviously doing a very poor job. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Hope you're having a great day.